Justice, No Peace. I'm Donnie,
I'm Alana.
I'm Janelle.
And I'm Kalia.
and welcome to DMLK's The Take. Now, this episode is going to be very special for us. It isn't part of our former or current series, but it has everything to do with the things we've been talking about.
So I'm sure y'all are wondering what's up this week. This is Putting the Pieces Black Together. We're looking to commemorate the beauty and the evolution and progression of our people throughout the creation and celebration of Black History Month. We want people everywhere to understand the merit and importance within this month so we can all continue to uphold and value our Black history.
Now we're kicking off Black History Month with a special guest. Today we'll be speaking to Barbara Dunn, an executive council member of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. This association was founded in 1915 by Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black History Month.
Welcome and thank you for joining us today on The Take. Before we get started, we must remind our listeners of our trigger alert. Alana, can you please read the trigger alert?
If you are not 110% in support of Black Lives Matter, please dismiss yourself. If you are in any sort of agreement with the systemic oppressions this country has inflicted on minorities, once again, please dismiss yourself. And if you are not willing to give every bit the power that the people so undeniably deserve, then please dismiss yourself. Because in a few moments, you will witness vast amounts of Black engagement. And if you do not dismiss yourself, then the thoughts, facts, and feelings we're about to share will most definitely dismiss you.
Before we begin today's episode, we would like for our guest to introduce herself and provide some background information. Can you also tell us what the purpose and mission of the ASALH is and what your role is within it, just so the audience can feel more tapped into the conversation?
Hello, everyone. I am Barbara Spencer Dunn, and I used my middle name as Spencer. That was my maiden name because my dad had no boys. So me and my two sisters all use our middle name as Spencer so we can carry on his legacy. And I was born in Borger, Texas, 50 miles outside of Amarillo, where my parents moved me when I was only 6 years old.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, to start off, to what extent did you grow up with knowledge about your ancestry, slavery, and Black history?
So I grew up in a very unique, in my opinion now that I've gotten older, a unique situation. My parents were devout Christians. My dad was a pastor for 36 years. But what was so unique about my situation, my dad's biblical knowledge, which I now know that the Bible is the first historical book, and the history goes all the way back to the biblical days. But he was also a lay historian who studied history of this country. He studied the history of lynching. He studied all kinds of things. He used to use atlases, used to read them back to back. And he really had a really solid foundation in history. So I grew up in that household with both my parents who were people of great integrity, who loved people no matter what. I learned to do that. So as a very young child, I learned a lot about my history just listening to my parents talk about my ancestors. So growing up, that foundation made me two things. It made me love people, even when they didn't love me back, because I was taught at a very young age, when you know you haven't done anything to cause somebody to act negatively towards you, don't take it personal. Take it as an opportunity to teach. And that's exactly what I did. So think about this. My parents sheltered me from going downtown because we were growing up in the very civil rights movement. I grew up in the 50s and 60s. So it was very prejudiced. They had white only water fountains. When you went to the theater, you had to sit in the balcony. Well, I never experienced any of that. You know why? Because my parents were wise enough to keep me from it while they were pouring into me the value of who I was. So in 16 years old, when I first went downtown, the Woolworths in our community had just been integrated. I had my first bout with racism. And the lady that called me the N-word, she was a white lady working in the store. And I looked at her and said, ma'am, if I were you, when you see somebody else that looks like me, I would not call them that word because we don't like it. I said, and another person that you see that looks like me might not respond like I'm responding. Have a nice day. I know she probably looked and said, what just happened? And that was my first time when I went home to talk to my parents about that. But what's really neat about it, they weren't surprised. They knew I was going to have to come back with something. But I grew up in a family with my dad At 5, 6, 7 years old, there was a large white congregation church in our community called First Baptist. One summer, we would go to them and have vacation Bible school, and they would teach us. The next summer, they would come to our church, Mount Olive Baptist in Amarillo, Texas, and we would teach them. So when you're growing up in an environment where you're seeing people that don't look like you, but you're both teaching each other, you saw nothing different about the intellect, which is true. So I found out at an older age that this is the truth. There is a single root cause for centuries of trauma that is still lingering as it relates to our history in the United States. There's one race, the human race, and our skin color is just the essence of the beauty of who we are. It has nothing to do with our intellect or intelligence or anything. So I grew up knowing that. So that's what made me a little different from my peers, but I also impacted my peers because of what I knew.
I just want to say that that was amazing. And I don't know, it just touched him so deep in my heart. But in your biography, it says that you're a descendant of the enslaved persons of the Monte Plantation in Rusk County, Texas, one of the most complete records of any antebellum slave plantation in the state of Texas. Knowing this, what was it like growing up for you and carrying on this legacy?
Well, what's interesting about that, because I didn't know about Monte, my parents never mentioned it, but what they did mention was my relatives. They left me a lot of seeds planted that when I connected with it, I was able to connect the dots. So what do I mean by that? My dad had talked to me about his grandfather, Alf Spencer, who actually fought in the Civil War. So as an adult, I now have found out that he was in the 55th Regiment and he fought in the Civil War on the Union side, even though he grew up in Texas on the Confederate side. So I don't know how he escaped to get to the Union. I would love to find that out. But I recently found his name on the wall at the Civil War Memorial just last year in 2020. His name is on the wall at the Civil War Memorial, Alf Spencer, 55th Regiment. That's why I know what regiment he is. But the clue that my dad left me, your great granddad fought in the Civil War and he always called himself African. So growing up, the seeds that were planted, your great great granddad, Green Spencer, and his wife, Phoebe Spencer, Phoebe Lewis, they all dedicated the land for the first school and church. They had money when they left enslavement. They bought land, they dedicated it in the community to the first school and the first church. So my great great granddad, when I went to Anadarko, Texas, where they grew up, his name is on the cornerstone. So all these little seeds, I go to a cemetery down the road. My grandparents, Sim Spencer, Jenny Spencer, Sydney Ball, Elizabeth Ball, they're all in that cemetery. So they left enough seeds planted that I could go connect the dots. So I'm finding my people in all kinds of ways because my parents, even though I didn't know about the plantation itself, they left enough seeds that I was able to find it. How did I find out about the plantation? I am finding my cousins all over the world because they're doing their DNA and we're finding each other. So one of my cousins was on internet and she found out one of my cousins lives here in the Washington metropolitan area, right in Virginia. That cousin found out about a book that was written about the Monte Plantation. It was written by a man who was doing his dissertation called Dorman Winfrey. In his book, he has 80 enslaved people listed on the Monte Plantation. And guess what? They're my relatives. We were able to look at the name. Oh, there's Grandma Phoebe. There's great Grandma Phoebe. There's great Granddad Green Lewis. It was amazing. So from that day, we decided to go visit the plantation. And so in 2010, some of my cousins who I'd never met, we all showed up at the plantation. And that was when we first connected with Monte. But in 2018, years later, the state of Texas actually erected a monument there dedicated to my relatives. It was the first one dedicated to enslaved people, not to the person that owned the plantation. So there is a document, a monument with my enslaved person's names on it, and we were all there to witness it.
That's so beautiful. Like, I don't even know why I add on to that because, like, when you think about it, I'm going to mention this later, but there really isn't such a complete history where a lot of Black people, we don't know who our ancestors were and how we even came to this country. So I feel like it's really beautiful that like through DNA and through your distant family members, you're able to track that back to yourself. I just find that so interesting. And actually, speaking of that, recently the four of us took ancestry tests through 23andMe, and I'm gonna pull it up really quick just so I don't like say anything wrong. But I'm actually 71% West African, 8% Congolese and Southern East African. I'm 19% Northwestern European. And what about you, Janelle?
I'm 62% Congolese, 33% Nigerian, and 4% Cameroonian, which is crazy because I thought Cameroonian would have been my highest percentage just based off what my family had always told me. And I didn't even know I was Nigerian, so that definitely came as a shock to me.
I'm 35% West African, 6% Congolese and Southeast African, and 56% Northwestern European. What about you, Donnie?
Yeah, I myself am actually 55% West African, 29% Nigerian, 24% European, 9% British and Irish, 5% Native American, and 26% Puerto Rican. And there's like a lot. There's like a lot. There's like way more than that. But those are the major things that my ancestry tells me.
And
That is so awesome, you guys, because I did my DNA too. And really I found out my family is from Nigeria as well. Yes. So I got a lot to share with you guys later down the road about that. You never know, we might be related.
yep. And actually, speaking of that, on the 23andMe report, it actually shows you some of your DNA relatives are. And looking at me, I know I probably had like, I've even checked, but last time I had like 1,400 distant relatives, like going back and back and back, removed and removed. And looking at it, it is mostly distant cousins or other family members who have taken the test. And I just want to ask you, because of this destruction and lack of record keeping of Africans and Black people during slavery, can't track our ancestry beyond a few generations. And because you have that information of who/where your ancestors were during slavery, how do you feel about the countless other Black people who don't know who their ancestors are?
It makes me want to help them. One of my cousins who I just met through DNA, who literally grew up in the same hometown I did under a different name because his mom didn't tell him who his real father was. When he found out when she died, he sought out to find his new family and he did his DNA and he found that I was his cousin and we had grown up in the same town, gone to churches together. He was only 3 months older than my son. So he was born in 1968. What that did for him, he wanted to help people. So when he came to me, he found out my passion was racial harmony. And we wanted to not only, first of all, I wanted to help my people understand the value of who they are. He also wanted to help them connect with their families through DNA. So we actually are starting a business. We've already gotten started where we're going to be helping people do just what you said. Because I know, and I know what it made me feel like, I want everybody to know. So our family is going to help others do that. And that's what it did to me.
I'm so happy that you said that because I know that there's a lot of people out here that really, really, really want to know who their ancestors are, but they really just can't because there's no records of them. But being a Black woman in the United States with such a diverse and ethnically strong culture, was there ever a time in your life where you felt like you struggled with self-identity issues as well as many other Black females in this country do? And how do you think Black History Month can help counteract the effects of self-depreciation?
First of all, because of my dynamic parents, I have never felt inferior. Never, ever, ever. And like I told you, the way they raised me, they protected us from what was really happening in the world. We were a Black community. We all lived on one side of the track. All my teachers were Black. My community was Black. We went to Black congregation churches, except for what I was telling you about interacting with the white churches. But and they were just human beings like us to me. So even when I got with them, I saw them as just human beings. I interacted with them. When I went back to my neighborhood, I was being strengthened. And that's what I realized. So I never, and I'm thankful to God, I never felt inferior. So my friends, I always uplifted them too, because that's who I was. And I owe it all to my parents because they were so wise to do that. But what about Black History Month? You know, that's why I love Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, because my dad introduced me to Carter G. Woodson when I was just a preteen. He had on his bookshelf a book called The Miseducation of the Negro, which you all have to read if you have not read it. And one of the things, I looked at the book and it said, The Miseducation of the Negro. And I was like, what does that mean? Now, remember, I'm only 11 years old. My dad looked at me and said, you know what? I want you to read the book. Every question you have, ask me. Now, my dad knew something about me to tell an 11-year-old to read The Miseducation of the Negro, and you'll understand that when you read it, because it is deep. Dr. Woodson's language and the way he wrote, it was really deep. But when I read it, it changed again my thinking. And I wanted to help my people understand who they were. So Black History Month, when Dr. Woodson started this celebration, he started it in 1926. And he had started an organization called the Association for the Study of African American, Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, it was at first. This is where this came from. So in 1926, he started Negro History Week. And the reason he called it a week, he wanted to just get enough time to start a celebration. And he chose the week between Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln's birthday because of what they both had done for our people. When he started that, and it expanded to the month later in the years, and it didn't expand until the 70s, he was giving people around the world, not only us, but people of all cultures, an opportunity to learn the truth about history, because we had been told a lie. Like I told you, there is a root cause for how this country was started. This country was built on a lie. And so we have to dismantle the lie by telling the truth. That's what Black History Month is. Every year, ASALH chooses a theme. They introduce it in February, and then you're to study it for the whole year. It was never meant for just the week or the month. And so when we study that theme, and this year's theme, you guys, I'm so excited, it's the Black family. Representation, identity, and diversity. And so all over the world, we're asking people to study this theme. We're bringing our family of Black people all over the world together through this theme. And so I'm so excited about what you guys are doing. You guys have got to study this theme this year in your schools. So you got to get connected with ASALH in that way. And I'm going to share with you all the exciting things we're doing through a virtual festival that we're doing for Black History Month.
Okay, I love all of that. And I really like how you said you introduced this topic during February and you teach it for the rest of the year. I think that's just like so big to me, because when growing up, we didn't have that. We only, like, during February, that's the only time we really learned our history. So I just think it's so cool that you're able to do that throughout the year. And just going to, because I know reading that book that you just suggested that we read, The Miseducation of the Negro, I guess that has helped you in some way form the ASALH group organization. And I just want to know, as the executive council member of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, how do you think joining this organization like impacted you, your lives, and the lives of those around you?
You know what's really unique about me getting with ASALH? Remember I told you my dad introduced me to Carter G. Woodson. I had no idea that I was going to end up working for the organization that he founded. In fact, I didn't know there was an organization. I knew about Carter G. Woodson. I learned that he was the father of Black history, but I didn't know there was an organization behind it. So all these years, you know, one day I got a call from a friend of mine. ASALH needed a office manager. Well, I had just started a business of my own, so I wasn't looking for a 9-to-5. So I said, well, no, I'm not interested in 9-to-5. She said, well, they really need help. Can you think? And then when I found out that who they were, that this was the association that Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded in 1915, I was like, what? So I went to the interview after sitting before thinking, I don't want a job. I don't have time for a 9-to-5. She asked me at the end of the interview, how much do we need to pay you? And I said, whatever you can afford. Because I knew that I was going to give my life to help this organization become known and grow for the rest of my life. The first day that I was there, I saw the books on the shelf that my dad kept, the Journal of Negro History. This was the book that Dr. Woodson founded in 1916, the year after he founded the organization. It's the first journal, academic journal, by and about African American. It's the most popular in the whole world to this day. And the next day, a couple of weeks after that, I got a call at the office. I answered the phone. It was the pastor that took my dad's place at the church after my dad died. He was calling to order the Black History kit. I said, "How did you know about this kit?" He said, "Well, I'm just following what your dad has done for all these years. He always ordered the Black History kit." That's when I got the revelation that all of those nice pictures and things that my mom was giving us to do our school projects, they had come from Asala. So do you hear what I'm saying? I was meant to end up here. And I had no idea. So I ended up here in 2000. And last year was the 20th year that I've served Asala. I worked for them for 7 years. I left and then I started just volunteering for them. And then I ran for office and I serve on the council. My term will be up in December. I will have served on the council for 6 years, but I will spend the rest of my life telling people about Asala, telling the people about Carter G. Woodson, and helping people understand how important it is for you to know your history.
I really love that. And it is so crazy because at the beginning of our journey, we really didn't know that any of this would come. We didn't know that we would have created this podcast or been able to partner with BH365 to advocate for the curriculum and to advocate for teaching Black history and in such a big way. And it's so crazy because I talk about this all the time, how like the timelines and everything just fit together. And I do personally believe that this is like my purpose and really what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's so crazy that you say that. And for us to now get to inspire and impact others, I feel like that's so beautiful and such a gift. And it makes me want to ask you, being a part of the organization that created Black History Month, can you talk about what it was like to get started and how you've inspired others to participate?
Ever since I've started working for Asala, I looked at how small the numbers were as far as membership. They're a membership organization. And I said, everybody needs to know about Dr. Woodson. So one of the things that I did that you will really be able to relate to, I wanted to start setting some models of how we could expand the organization. And so one of the things I did was introduce Asala to the state superintendent of schools in Maryland. Her name was Nancy Grasmick at the time. She ended up purchasing memberships for all 23 counties and Baltimore City, and then and Baltimore County. And then after that, we set up a special membership for any county that had an institutional membership for their schools that it was a less amount to purchase. And we ended up with over 160 memberships just of the schools. See this and that what we did was we showed them the value of Asala. They weren't teaching Black history in the schools, but they were starting to put a curriculum together. And we showed them the value of being with Asala so you could be in touch with historians who have the truth and they can help you build your curriculum around the truth. That's where Asala is very valuable. Every school system in the whole country and around the world needs to be connected with Asala. So that's what I did. I said, I knew that not every child that goes to a school, there should be no child that does not know who Carter G. Woodson is. Every child should know who he is, because I'm saying every child, no matter what your ethnic background is, because he did this work for everybody. He first wanted to educate his own people, but then he wanted to educate all people to the truth so we could bring harmony among people throughout the world. That has been my goal ever since I've been here. That was always my mission in life as a child. I wanted racial harmony. Once I started opening my eyes to what was going on with the civil rights movement, I knew then that I wanted to help people come together because I had the love in my heart for all people. And I knew everybody needed that for us to change what was happening in this country. So I was very excited about connecting with Asala. It was just connecting me with an organization that was all about my life's work.
Well, Asala sounds like such an amazing organization. And I like how you said in order to inspire others to participate and how everyone should know about Asala. You have to show them the value of what's going on, and that will really help people come together. But I feel like that has something big to do with how our society reacts to to Black people. And with that being said, I just want to move into the question: with so much in our society stacked against you, specifically as a Black woman, what kept you motivated to continue your activism work?
What kept me motivated, because I absolutely know who I am. Nothing anybody can do can change that for me, but I also know who everybody is meant to be. And so that's what has motivated me to keep moving forward, keep helping people, keep inspiring people, keep loving people, even when they're unlovable. Because what I know is, first of all, I told you I was a Christian. So when I grew up, I understood that God was real. And that was really my basis. But I also knew the enemy is Satan, and he was real. So when I look at people, when they're acting out, I don't see them as the actor. I see them influenced by the enemy. So that's why I can see straight through them and see who's at the root of their problem, so I can keep loving them. And that came straight from my growing up at home. I love everybody, no matter how crazy they get, no matter how crazy they act, no matter how crazy they act towards me. I know how to meet them where they are. And I'm gonna tell you guys, that is something that you have to learn to do. Meeting people where they are is the most important element in life, because we have to live together. It would change everything in this world if everybody felt like that. If you looked at a person, you realize their humanity. You realize you should love them because of their humanity. And then you can help them grow if they need to grow, because we've been socialized certain ways. Everybody's orientation, what they learned in their home, is different. So we have to know that I know people didn't grow up like me. They didn't get everything I got when I was growing up. So I don't look down on them because of that. I can meet them right where they are. And I learned that through my Christian upbringing. And that's one of the key things, I think, when you look at the hate. If you have learned to love and you learn what's true about that, it changes the way you operate in the whole world.
I honestly think that's so beautiful, and honestly something that everybody could learn from, because I know specifically with the work we've done, we have received a lot of opposition, and sometimes it can be hard to keep the mindset that you have, where sometimes there's just something going on in people's lives to cause them to act the way they do. And speaking of that, one of the most common and annoying comments that comes up during or whenever someone speaks on Black History Month is, why don't Black people get an entire month when white people don't get one? And we could go on and on about that. But being someone deeply knowledgeable about your own ancestral history and Black history in itself, what would you say to these people who try to demean Black History Month?
Black history is American history that's been left out and ignored. So when you get the month, it's your month too. It's a month that celebrates the contributions of people of African descent that have been left out, ignored, distorted. So don't look at it as you're not getting a month, because you are. It's your history too. And you need to pay attention to it, because you didn't get that in school. People can go through all the way to their PhD and never learn anything about African American history. There are some HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. You can go to one of those, still not get your history if you don't elect it. Now, my alma mater, Bowie State University, I'm very proud to say, when you go to Bowie, everybody that goes to Bowie gets that history. And there are other HBCUs that's true about too, but I'm just gonna lift mine up for right now. But there are places you can go and you don't get it. So the important thing is, Black History Month is a celebration for all cultures. And every other heritage holidays that's celebrated in this country, American Indian Month, Women's History Month, Asian American History Month, Hispanic, all of them modeled after what Dr. Woodson did. They started with a week and expanded to the month. And so, because that was Dr. Woodson's goal, he said, I'm going to document the African descendant people, but it's my goal that every culture will be documented. And it was after he died when these others started to operate. But most people don't know that information. That's what you have to share with them. So that month, you tell them they have a month. African American History Month is everybody's month. And it's just a month that stops and pauses and celebrates the contributions that people have ignored celebrating all these years. We have a whole lot to learn. And so we should be celebrating it forever because it's going to take a long time to learn all we've missed out on. So help them by telling them that.
I know that with what we're doing right now, we're trying to inspire others to join what we're doing. That way we could teach African American history, because like you are so right when you mean African American history is everybody's history. Everyone could learn from looking into other people's history. And I just think it's so important that you said that. And that's the whole reason why we started this whole organization. We're trying to get our history in the curriculum, and we're trying to get everyone involved with what we're doing. That way we could go hopefully nationwide. With that being said, in your own opinion, why should the evolution of Black History Month hold so much value in the lives of African American individuals? And what does Black History Month mean to you?
Black History means to me that Black History Month means to me that we really have started to move in the right direction. From the time Dr. Woodson set aside and documented our history so that you guys and me, when we came along, that it would be there. It means so much because now people, even people who are in colleges who don't know, they can come to this organization and get the truth. That's what you have to do. That TRUTH word is so important because there's a lot of history out there that's totally untrue. But you have the ability through a SALA, and this should be your resource to vet everything you do. You know, you guys go on and you can Google it. You can Google everything, but everything that you Google is not true. So you have to be someone who does self-study from this point in your life on. You do your own digging and research because the truth does exist. Why? Because this organization exists. Black History Month brought that to the world. And I'm gonna tell you right now, people all over the world celebrate Black History Month. And you know what? They give credit to Carter G. Woodson because they know where it came from. They say his name, they write his history. And we've connected with people around the world during the pandemic. That's the silver lining. We've been Zooming, meeting with them all over the world, celebrating this month. And that's what it means to me. It is so valuable. It should never stop being celebrated. And when people say, isn't it time to get ready? No, this is a celebration. You stop and celebrate the contributions. And I'm glad that other cultures started doing it for themselves too. But Black history is everybody's history. We all started in Africa. Civilization started there. And remember what I said, the color of your skin is just the essence of the beauty of who you are. Darker to lighter, we are all one human race. So it does not matter. And that's why Black History Month is so important. Keep celebrating it, no matter what anybody else tells you.
Thank you. And actually, I love that saying. I swear I'm going to start using it. They're going to notice because that's such a beautiful saying. Like, I don't even know what I could add on to that. And just speaking of Black History Month in general, because honestly, I feel like not only should Black people hold it in so much strength and value and essence, but as you said, everybody should, because Black history has contributed to virtually everything in the entire world. And for me personally, I believe that arguably one of the best ways to celebrate Black History Month is to celebrate your ancestors and the Black people before you who made the history we're reflecting on in the first place. So I just want to ask you, as an executive council member of ASALAH, I want to make sure I get it right, how do you think our ancestors will react to being commemorated by Black History Month?
I'm going to tell you, not how they are overjoyed. They are celebrating with us. They are leading and guiding us. I get 3 o'clock in the morning wake up calls. And I know it's God. When I write, the books I've written, 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what that is, but it's interesting. I've met other people that wake up at 3 too. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with these outstanding ideas in my head. And let me tell you, from that little girl who first read Miseducation of the Negro to now, and I turned 70 years old last year. I'm so excited. I made it to the promise of 70 years. I still to this day get 3 o'clock in the morning wake up calls, and whatever is in my mind, I know it can be done. In my early years, God would plant seeds in my mind like, you need to do an album. And I would say, I don't have a choir. But now when things come in my mind, I just start walking towards them because I know that God is going to give me all the other resources to make it happen on the end. I'm not going to be the one to do everything. I have the vision, but I can make the vision happen because he's going to connect me. And you know what? He's connected me with you guys because You are going to be, so it's y'all's generation with the help of your elders that's going to turn this whole thing around. Race is a social construct, it does not exist. And so we got to get people's hearts transformed by planting the seeds of truth. And that's what Black History Month is. That's what teaching the truth about history is. And that's why I'm going to support you guys in whatever you need. I want you to know you got to meet a group called Kiamsha. And they were the first youth group that I actually wrote my book and started to use with the training. All of what I'm talking to you about since 1992, they've been doing, and they're activists like you, and they've been working with their peers. They are taught to mentor their own peer group. And that's what I see in you. You're going to do this so much bigger and so much wider than anybody else. So I'm really looking forward to supporting what you guys are doing. You are a godsend.
This conversation right now is literally like giving me life because it's so crazy how everything works, and we talk about this all the time. And just with everything that's going on, being able to, from the first time that our first podcast, learning about this, and we bring it up every single time. We were reading our first text, What to the Slaves of the 4th of July, and all of us were just invested in it. Like, we were reading and we were going and taking notes, and we were like, let's just jump back in. And since then, just learning my history, I know for me personally, and this year being devoted to this, it has changed me in the way that I view a lot of things, in the way that I interact with people, and the way that I just carry myself. And it's like literally like a testimony to what Black history can do for a person, and what truly celebrating and understanding the truth and just the beauty of Black history can do. So, but with that being said, I want to ask you what your opinion about the Black History 365 curriculum is, and do you feel like it does justice to the Black history that students are rarely, if ever, taught in schools?
Let me tell you, Black History 365 is all that and a couple of bags of chips. There is no textbook ever in the world ever created like this book. I'm telling you, you guys, y'all, to have this come to you in your generation while you're in school, you want to be so thankful. I have never seen one textbook put that much in one place, and I'm a study of history. It is awesome. It's factual, and they're not opinionated. They're just documenting the truth. And that's what you need to do. Black history stands on its own. And the history of our people stands on its own if you just tell the truth about it. And that's what Black History 365 is to me. It is a factual textbook that is reaching not only you guys, it's reaching the world. Because think of all the generations that came before you that did not have a textbook that told them about themselves, but all they saw was them in slavery. This book is for everybody, and it's factual. And I absolutely love the vision that Dr. Milton and Dr. Freeman had. And I'm so thankful to be a part of their team.
So since you have connections with BH365, it's safe to assume that you have the book in your library. Among this book,
Absolutely. Do you want me to show it to you?
Yeah.
It's right there. Yes, I do. As soon as they made it where you could order it, I ordered it. And of course, had to wait for a couple of months for it to be published, but I was probably one of the first ones to get it at my house. I love it. And actually, I don't know if you know this. This is what is so incredible to me. And like I said, how God works things out. I mean, you don't even know what your life is leading to. Because I knew Dr. Freeman years ago, Dr. Freeman and Dr. Milton called me in March. This was at the beginning of the pandemic, and asked me to write the tribute to Dr. Woodson in the book. I actually wrote the tribute for Carter G. Woodson in Black History 365. And that has everything to do with where I started. I told you, with my mom and dad, it goes all the way back to my point of reference. I had no idea that I would be writing a tribute to Carter G. Woodson in a textbook. I'm so excited about that.
that's amazing. Like, wow, I didn't even know that you wrote that. But among this book, what would you say is in your literary lineage or your book rotation?
Oh my God, if you saw my library, I have most of the books that people are historical books that people really look at. I have a lot of the W.B. Du Bois. I have all of John Hope Franklin's books because I'm a friend of his son. John Hope Franklin well, actually, he's on this picture right here. He was mentored by Carter G. Woodson. And I knew him and I know his son. We're friends now. So he has a whole lot of really good books. But almost anything, I have books that talk about Africa. I have biblical books. I really got Tony Evans. He just came out with a Bible that actually has QR codes in it. I couldn't believe it. It's the second book I have in my house with QR codes. Black History 365 was the first. So I have a lot of books in my library. I do a lot of reading. That's one thing that I did as a child. In fact, one summer I won a contest where I read 100 books over the summer. And of course they were children's books, but I read 100 and won a prize for that. And let me tell you about that too, by the way. Libraries, I didn't realize we couldn't go to the library. We used to get a bookmobile that would come to our neighborhood, and I thought that was a privilege. I thought they were doing something special for us. But what I found out was our community fought to get the library to come to us because we weren't allowed to go in the library. And I did not learn that for sure until 2005, looking at the Rosa Parks movie. She was taking the kids in the library and they would ask them to check out a book, and the lady would say, no, you can't check out a book. You can't check out a book. And it hit me then. I called a friend of mine in Amarillo where I grew up, and I said, could we go to the library? And she said, we couldn't. I said, so the bookmobile was coming there because we couldn't go? Absolutely. So you see how sheltered we were, but it was sheltering for a good reason because it helped me to grow up knowing who I was and feeling good about myself. And then when I had to really attack what was really out there, it was not a problem for me to do it because I was stable in who I was.
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you. And I would like, if it would be totally awesome, because I know that we all want to read The Miseducation of the Negro. And I think it would be really cool if you could recommend us some other books because we're actually, I think we're partnering with one of the not a librarian, but she works with the libraries, and she wants to help put Black representation in each library so students could find ways to look up to themselves and appreciate to love themselves and more. And I think it'd be so cool if you could recommend us some of the books that you have in your library. And with that being said, I would also just like to say, Ms. Dunn, we would like to thank you for coming on the take today. And we are just honored to have had the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And it was truly amazing. And we strongly appreciate you, your perspective, and all of the knowledge you have blessed us with today.
And I'd like to say thank you so much. And I'm here to support every effort you ever do. Just call on me for anything.
On today's episode, we talked about the beauty and the evolution of Black History Month, as well as the importance and resilience that lies within our Black history. We discussed the founding of this month, as well as what ASALH has been doing since the founding in 1915. So here's our call to action. We understand that Black history is not just existing for 1 month. Black history is made and should be celebrated 365 days a year. There's a reason why African Americans were deprived of their knowledge, their sense of self-worth, their education, and their liberation. But because education is liberation, we must internalize the importance of learning our history. Our Black history is American history. Minority history is American history. Our history matters, our history is real, and it deserves to be taught, acknowledged, and celebrated. Still, too many people only recognize Black history during the month of February, as if we do not exist the rest of the year. That is why the Black History 365 textbook is so important in preserving and honoring the lives of our ancestors and our trailblazers.
Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Chinua Achebe.
Before we end this episode, we have a special announcement for you guys. We have planned some events to celebrate and appreciate our Black History Month. We'll be featuring some pretty cool facts, guests, and activities related to Black history, and you guys can join in on the fun. We'll be ending the month with multi-platinum Grammy Award winner Dr. Kevin K.O. Cates, educator, producer, and entrepreneur. And we'll be hosting his listening party and announcing some of our big moves, so make sure not to miss it.
Y'all can tune into our social media outlets, No Justice, No Peace, DMLK's The Take, and give us feedback on what else you would like to see done during the month of February.
I am happy. I have a dream. I got a dream. One day we're gonna work it out. social justice.